Take one.
Take two, actually, because my camera died. Hello, welcome to the Harper Hall YouTube channel. And I can't remember exactly where I left off. So we're just gonna start from the beginning, have some fun with it. I'll introduce myself again. Hey, welcome back. My name is Harper, and you're watching the Harper Hall channel on YouTube. Let's fucking go.
And then you add confused.
We're so fucking back. Turns out the only time that I can actually release a freaking video is when it's an assignment for a school class. So that's what this is. I'm taking a psychology of sexuality class, and for my project I've decided to talk about pet play, which is something that we don't really talk about. It's a subculture that I think is really interesting. I know a lot of people in the pup play community and in the pet play community. Wow. That is something that has always interested me as a trans queer individual. I know a lot of trans femme people who are in the pet play community. So let's start off with a little brief introduction to what pet play is. Let me get my handy dandy definition up. Pet play, or animal roleplay, is a form of roleplay where humans take on the persona of non-human animals or their handlers, often but by far not always within a sexual context. Jeff Mann also talks about how the pet play community is related to the BDSM community, but how it's distinct. Like, we could talk about the BDSM community, we could talk about the pet play community. Those two things have overlap, but they're not the same community. Notably, pet play just has those elements of dominance and submission, which are two of the words. So if we're talking about puppy play in this context, or pup play, that would be a specific form of pet play where the non-human animal that you are taking on the persona of in the role play is specifically a dog. It's the most common form of pet play, and Jeff Mann has some suggestions as to why that might be. Even though I'm doing this for a psychology of sexuality project, pet play isn't necessarily sexual. There are a lot of things about pet play that aren't necessarily sexual, but we're gonna have to talk about the sexual parts too, because that's also a large part of it. So that's why I put these memes on. This one was... This one is just a meme about the dichotomy of being a puppy girl, I guess. This person is like, I'm a puppy girl VTuber. And I don't know much about VTubing, but then like these people are like, oh, I guess you're probably like a sexual puppy girl. But what she really means is I just like to be pat on the head, called a good girl and stuff like that. And that's not necessarily sexual.
Apparently that art, the questioning puppy girl, is Mako's Twitter mutual. Okay,
apparently I am 1 degree removed from the person who drew this. That is something that just happens when you're a trans woman. I have so many friends in the pup play community. And they're all trans.
Just friends?
Well, okay, so I think that leads us to the next most obvious question, which is, of course, Harper pet play enjoyer confirmed? Do I personally partake in pet play? And I am afraid I will not be spilling the tea. I'm trying to sort of embody Jeffree Star here. I'll not be spilling the tea. I won't be coming here and sending all the screenshots that I have, all the chats that I have.
I am done with the tea, with the drama.
Today I will not be confirming whether or not I personally engage in pet play. A very common response or sort of stigma that people who research sexology get from people who don't study sexology is that they kind of assume that like sexology researchers are like the kinkiest people around, and like if you're studying a kink then you must surely have that kink, or you must surely be part of that, and that's not necessarily the case. So am I studying pet play because I personally am in the pet play community and like to do pet play and whatever? It doesn't matter. So there. I kind of forgot to do the... Wait, hold on. So I guess that sort of brings us to the next most obvious question, which is, I guess, Harper pet play enjoyer confirmed? Am I, Harper, a person who engages in pet play? I won't tell. You don't need to know. You don't need to know that. I'm gonna get a lot of clips for me to throw in here. You don't need to know that.
No, no, no,
No,
no.
no, no, no. Just because I want to study pet play does not mean that I am into pet play. You'll never know. So, who does do pet play? Let's forget. We're not talking about me anymore. Let's get me out of the picture. I'm gone. Who does do pet play? Studying this gets kind of tricky. Demographic information about people who engage in certain, like, culturally stigmatized, often, like, sexualized activities. It's really hard to study them. It's really hard to get a bunch of responses. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. And it's also just hard to get that sort of research funded. So for the purposes of this project and this video that I'm making right now, I made a freaking Google form. I put it up on my Instagram story for like a day because I know I have a lot of friends who are in the pet play community. I didn't get a lot of responses. See, the problem with studying sexology research is that you can't get anybody to talk about sex in the United States because it's so stigmatized. And I was like, I bet I could just get some demographic information if I published a survey. I was cocky.
I answered it.
Yeah, I did get some responses. My Google form ended up not being extremely helpful for demographic information, but it did give me a little bit of insight into the perspectives of people who do pet play in one way or another, so I'll talk about that later. I'll probably put a Google form link in the description, although it probably won't be this survey. I think if I actually want to like do a survey that anyone on the internet can do, I want to have better questions. I kind of threw it together in a little bit of a hurry. If I put a form in the description, it'll be probably a little bit different. Instead, I want to look at some studies that actual academics with resources have done in this field. It's an extremely understudied thing. Nobody is studying pet play right now, save for a few people, including Liam Wignall. Liam Wignall is probably one of the leading researchers in pet/puppy play right now. Feels weird to maybe count myself among that group. It's just very understudied. So Liam Wignall and a group of other researchers did a community survey of people who engage in pup play in 2020. And this survey is pretty brief. It does have some interesting demographic information. It doesn't really go so far into like the personal experiences of people. It's mostly demographic, but I do want to go over a few things. For one, we got a little bit of like age and geographical data. I think it's probably true that most of the people who were able to access this survey were probably in the United States and Europe, which is probably why there's such a huge percentage of people who are North American or European who took the survey. I just love this. You have 6 people total that they surveyed who were practicing pet play in their 60s, which is awesome. It just proves that people will fuck until they die. There's actually more people from Oceania who are into pup play than people in Europe. So what I really found interesting was this graph. They polled the respondents on how much of their pet play experience was sexual and how much of their pet play experience was social. So how much pet play are you doing that is specifically sexual, like specifically within a sexual setting? And how much of it is maybe domestic? How much of it is just like wearing a collar, maybe just getting like head scratches, or being like called good girl, just like in a non-sexual way. And what we found is that like predominantly people are half and halving it. We even have more people who are doing it explicitly socially than people who are doing it explicitly sexually, which I think goes to show it's not necessarily a sexual behavior. Most people are not doing pet play explicitly sexually. In fact, that is the least amount of people who responded. But there's some issues with Liam Wignall's piece that I just want to talk about really quick. First and foremost, this survey was mostly done by white cisgender gay men, which is... Don't boo them. Don't boo them. They exist and they're accepted by me. I just want to go on the record, I'm pro gay men existing.
You know who's gay?
Your friend Brock. I know.
You know who's also gay? Dan and Bill.
I knew that. This survey was predominantly done by cisgender white gay men. So that has led researchers to believe that they predominantly make up the pet play community. And that may be true. But it also kind of leaves out the transgender, genderqueer experience in a pretty major way, in a way that I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about specifically how queerness relates to pet play. I think it's interesting. So that brings us to what I think is perhaps the single most conclusive, cohesive, what's the word I'm looking for? The biggest ever survey ever done on pet play in the world. GoodDogGirls@Tumblr.com.
Woo! I love Tumblr!
GoodDogGirls@Tumblr.com. This is where the real research gets done, okay? This, I don't know. I don't think you could read this. I'll put it on the screen. This survey asks a lot more specific, a lot more interesting questions, and it was performed on Tumblr, so a lot more gay people took it, which is important.
It's not just gay people on Tumblr.
It's a lot of gay people on Tumblr. On Tumblr, you're more likely, especially if you're doing a survey about pet play, I think you're more likely to get it to a queer audience, which is what I'm interested in looking at. So here are some interesting things that survey found, and I'll put links to all of these. I'll put links to all of these in the description so you can look, because I want everyone to get credit. This wheel represents the biggest appeal of pet play. Predominantly, people said escaping the responsibilities of being a human or adult. I wonder if that is going to be a running theme later on. Associating with an animal spirit or animalistic persona, I would attribute that more to like furries, like people
Or
who are
other
doing, people who are doing pet play who are also in the furry community, and that is the lowest slice of the pie here.
Shout out furries.
Shout out furries, love furries. The second biggest reason was humiliation/degradation or being less than human. So actually both of these pies specifically relate to trying to escape or feel less than human, like the construction of humanity. We're getting there. Do people engage in pet play roles and scenarios during sex? The biggest one was when I can manage to, followed by yes often. So most people who are in the pet play community are doing pet play during sex as well. We also have people who are saying no, never. Like 10% of people who are doing the pet play survey are like, no, I don't do it during sex, which is interesting. When asked if people have an interest, are in or have been in a pack/stable or other pet play group. So that's just the amount of people who are in like packs, which is a very specific thing in the pet play community that rarely ever happens. You have like a 4.5% who are like, yeah, I'm part of a pack, because those are very rare.
Shout out to this person. You know they did their research and that you know that they were fucking in the pet play community, because then they're...
Exactly. Liam Wignall is a pup. So he's also part of the community, but in a different...
Not as a freak. He's not as much of
a freak, I guess. I'm not going to put that in the video. So what's interesting, though, is that less than 5% of people are saying that they are part of a pack. But 60% of people are saying that they would be interested in being part of a pack. So I guess people just need to get out more and just say what they want. The types of pet play that people are into, predominantly puppy or wolf play, like by a landslide. But then we have people who were into kitten play, above that, followed by horse play. And those are definitely the three. But you do have people who are saying cow, pig, livestock, rabbit. And you have some people who are doing reptile stuff, other pet play. There's a wide variety. I would just like to note that the top 3 consistently most done forms of pet play and the most preferred forms of pet play center themselves around animals that we have specifically positioned ourselves in like a relationship to domestication-wise. Dogs have famously become man's best friend, domesticated from wolves. Cats sort of exist as like the second option to that. And then horses have been domesticated by man for our purposes for centuries. I mean, it's animals that we can easily center our human perspective of domestication around. I have some more graphs. Okay, so 1,570 people completed the entire survey, and of those people, 179 of them were trans women. So that's About 11%. I don't know if you know the amount of trans women in the United States.
It's like 1%.
It's less than 1% because trans people is like 0.8%. That may have something to do with the fact that this was posted on Tumblr. I'm not going to ignore that, but it is interesting.
Are you arguing that trans women just want to be domesticated?
Maybe. I'm leading to it.
Okay.
Especially because that is the largest, like, non-cisgender gender identity that took part in the survey. Also, more than half of the people surveyed were attracted to both men and women. Bisexuals unite. People's views on engaging in pet play within public settings generally favor discreet play. So the predominant form of in-public pet play that people are doing is discreet pet play such as collars in public, verbal and nonverbal commands. So of the people who are doing pet play, even domestically in an outside context, they're mostly doing it extremely discreetly, which could just be about how we stigmatize things in America. I don't know. Let's see what else they have on the list though. Walking pets on leashes in public, doing tricks, using pet names are fine as long as things are not sexually explicit. That's a relatively... all the others are relatively small pieces of the pie.
And part of that is probably the stigma.
Yeah, there's also a very small amount of... the amount of people who say kinks such as pet play should stay strictly in the bedroom and or on private property is actually like the second to least.
Well, because it's not just sexual for most people.
It's not just sexual for most people. So that's why like so much of these are like, as long as it's not sexually explicit, I don't understand why it's a problem. There are not a lot of people who are predominantly doms. Total, there was like a 14% of people who only topped. But there were most of the people who are doing pet play are bottoms. Let's just get that out of the way. How much pet play people are currently engaging in? Most people are doing it only on occasion, in private, with a partner during explicit scenes. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Let's talk about something that I know is on everybody's minds right now. Pet play's ties to bestiality. It's the number one cited concern I've seen for people who do not engage in pet play, who are kind of dismissive of pet play, is that it evokes bestiality. Some people seem to conflate it with bestiality, and I'm here to tell you that it's not bestiality. For very obvious reasons, I think. See, pet play is only done by humans. It's done by humans who are fully capable of consenting, safely agreeing to do this. The reason that bestiality is like frowned upon is because animals can't consent the way that humans can. But pet play isn't actually involving a pet. It's involving two humans role-playing as a pet and a handler. And say whatever you want. If it weirds you out, it weirds you out. That's fine. I'm not saying that everybody should be doing pet play. If that's your choice, that's fine. But it's not bestiality. The people who engage in pet play are not doing bestiality, and they don't want to do bestiality necessarily. We've already talked a little bit about why people do pet play, and not a single person in that pie slice said it was because they wanted to fuck animals or be an animal getting fucked. A little crude, I guess. I'm losing steam a little bit.
You can do it, I believe in you. You're doing so good. Do you want to watch a video of a roadrunner getting chased by a coyote in real life, like from the Looney Tunes? It's on Tumblr, hold on. That's like from the Looney Tunes.
So that's the distinction between pet play and bestiality. The consent is more easily given. And that's what's important, right? It doesn't matter... Don't matter. It doesn't matter if you're role-playing as an animal, as a human, as long as the sex is safe, consensual, and ideally pleasurable. That's what we always say.
In class?
In class, that's what we always say. Safe, consensual, and ideally pleasurable. And pet play is all of those things. But Why is pet play? I can't remember what transition I was planning to do between slides for that, so I'm not gonna do it. Let's go back to Liam Wignall. He did another survey. It was a different survey, trying to identify what the pup subculture means to people, what benefits they get out of it. And here's what they found. I'm going to break these down for you a little bit. So what they found was, number one, social technologies are central to narratives of discovery for the pup subculture. A lot of people are getting into pup play and pet play because they have discovered it online. Secondarily, narratives of discovery support constructionist accounts of kink identity development. What does that mean? The people who engage in pet play often find themselves sort of dipping their toes in pet play at the beginning, usually not doing any big stuff, and then find that they relate to it. They find that it makes them happy, and they continue to get more and more into pet play. Something that is sort of tracked through this survey is this narrative of self-discovery through pet play. Pet play is not just existing for people as something that people are only doing for sex. It also exists seemingly as a way to help people sort of discover themselves, work through stuff, right? It's not just about the sex.
But it can also be.
But it can also just be about the sex. It's fucking cool if it's all about the sex, man. People think of pet play as very sexual, but it's more than that. And that's what I'm trying to convince people of here. Number 3, participation in the pup subculture confers individual psychological benefits related to stress relief, relaxation, and pleasure. Engaging in pet play just has good psychological benefits. It's not a sense of stress. It helps people relax. It helps people feel pleasure. It helps them relieve stress. Did I already say that? I can't remember. It helps them relax. Number 4, participation in the pup subculture confers social psychological benefits related to identity and community building. This section of the paper is basically saying that pet play helps build community. People often find themselves engaging in community and finding a place for themselves in that community. The pet play subculture helps people find not just themselves, but also friends and people that they relate to. But now I want to talk about Jeff Mann. What I like about Jeff Mann's paper is that he talks about pet play not just in the realm of psychology as a kink, but as specifically socialized into us, as something that is influenced by the societies that we live in, by our identities, by our personal lived experience.
And by what our society considers normal.
He specifically talks about kinks as a way to break oneself from normality, from our social construction of normality, and wants to interrogate pet play specifically in that context. And so we're going to talk about that. He talks about the human culture, animal nature dualism. Basically, we as humans have constructed what it means to be human. We really position ourselves against other animals, other non-human animals. Even though we are animals, and we know that. We're smart enough to know that. We want to believe that there's something more to humanity, that we are specifically like special, better even than other animals. And that belief has ties to how we treat other people. When we talk about racism, we talk about speciesism, because people of non-white races historically were basically viewed, I could argue they're still viewed today, as separate species, literally deserving less of humanity. Race science was indebted to proving that out. It was entirely in service of the purpose of trying to distinguish which humans were better than other humans. And we have not really interrogated as much as a society how we position ourselves against other animals. We still think of ourselves as better than other animals. We still think of ourselves as very distinct from other animals because we think of ourselves as smarter than, because we're the dominant species. And Jeff Manns looks at that and is like, maybe people are doing pet play because we think of ourselves so separately from animals. We think of ourselves as humans with human responsibilities and human needs, and we think of ourselves as so different. Being able to put ourselves in the shoes of an animal, a non-human animal that doesn't have those responsibilities, that is literally seen as non-human, it takes all of the associations with humanity away. And that is a powerful feeling. That's a powerful feeling, to relinquish the responsibilities of humanity. I mean, how many times have you looked at your cat and been like, fuck, you don't have to go to school today. You don't know how lucky you are that you don't have to go to work and pay your rent. We're literally all thinking that all the time. It's just some people do pet play about it. And he specifically talks about how dogs would be the most obvious object of our projection. We think of them so much as specifically domesticated by humans. They're ordered around, they're kept on leashes, they're kept as a member of the family, but as a non-human member of the family, with less responsibilities, fed and taken care of. All of those human fears just sort of like fade away when you're a pet, right? Right? I fear I'm not doing anything about the Harpers of pet play enjoyer allegations. I'm defining this so romantically. We see a lot of people in like America, that's a colonial state. America's a colonial state. You find more people in colonial states engaging in pet play.
All colonial states are deeply, deeply capitalist, and they're really very individualistic. And part of the pet owner dynamic is that there's always someone to take care of / be taken care of by.
Like you sort of rely on the relationship between like the pet and handler. One provides, one is provided to.
Also, there's that whole like, it's that poem, The Wild Geese, where she's like, if you have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves or whatever, and like we don't really give any time for that.
It just, pet play sort of allows people to listen to their natural impulses, to really let go of like the worries that might be influenced by their status as human. You no longer have to worry about taxes, you no longer have to worry about rent, because pets don't worry about that. That's why his paper is literally titled Be Dog, Have Fun, because it's about that. It's about being able to sort of just like be a dog, have fun, not be human anymore. I'm just gonna read this man quote because I like it. Socialization teaches us to behave civilized, i.e. not like wild animals. To comb our hair, to cut our nails, to shave unwanted body hair, to dress neatly, to hide body smells, to not eat with bare hands, to use a toilet behind closed doors. And above all, socialization teaches us to control the worst part of the animal within us, our sexuality. Every human being not only has to participate in the subjugation of the outer nature, but to achieve this, they also have to subjugate their inner nature. Domination over nature includes domination over humans. I just thought that really showed the relationship between like socialization, colonization, racism, speciesism, all this. It all relates to pet play, okay? I bet you didn't think this was gonna get this deep. Which I guess leads us to one more question. Why do people want to be handlers? We've talked so much about why people want to be pets, why people want to be controlled, if you want to put it that way. But so little research remains on the handlers. Why do people want to have that control? Why do people want to participate in that side of the role play? It's just a hole in the research right now that I'm hoping my survey that I did can possibly shed a little bit of light on. I got one response from a handler, a person who is specifically Hey guys, I bet you didn't expect to see me change locations again. Well, that's fair. I didn't expect it either. For some reason, my camera stopped recording after that point, so I'm just going to try and finish out the rest of my presentation as best as I can, as quickly as I can, so that I can go to bed soon, because it is late and I am deep in the editing process. Didn't realize I was going to have to do this. Okay, so I was talking about the one person from my survey who said they were explicitly a handler, and I was just gonna read the quote from them that said, where they said why they like being a handler. It would usually be on the background. I didn't have the energy to set up a background. I'm just gonna put it on the screen using editing magic so that I can read it to you, but you can also see it if you need to. I asked if you have engaged in or fantasized about doing pet play, what about it would you say appeals to you? Do you have a theory about why it does? They responded, for me personally, I'm a stone top and I enjoy being able to control my partner and take care of them. And that is it. That is the only concrete reason I can find that is given for people liking to do that. So maybe that's what it's all about. You know, maybe some people, some people just like to be controlled. Some people want to have that control. There's someone out there for everybody. It's a wonderful world, dude. I had a conclusion slide. I was gonna do a little funny bit, and I did. It just didn't get recorded. I had my presentation, and I was gonna switch from this and go to the conclusion slide. I don't know if you can see, but I was gonna go to the conclusion slide, and then I was gonna say, in conclusion, it was gonna be really funny. I don't know if it had the same effect. Thank you for watching so much. I mean, I appreciate it. If literally anybody is watching this right now, that is awesome. It's awesome that anybody wants to listen to me. I want to come out with more. I want to come out with more videos. I have so many ideas of videos that I would like to do, and then I just don't do that. If anybody else is in college right now, you can probably understand. So I did film another conclusion to this video. I got another conclusion on tape where I introduce you to my girlfriend and my cat, so I'm probably gonna cut to that. Got it? Come here. This is my lovely girlfriend.
Hi.
She's the person who's been making comments in the background this whole time. This is our cat. This is our actual pet, Tooth. Thank you for watching this. I'm gonna go try to enjoy the rest of my Thanksgiving break. Try to get some actual rest in before I have to start editing this. Good night. Good night.